Hello and welcome. This is my screencast on my accounting for the author lesson plan project. This was a wonderful opportunity for me to put together a lesson plan project using the ISTE template. Um, had to put together a project that incorporated technology as well as standards from the content area. Actually, after putting together the background information of the teacher, that was the next step to identify the standards that would be covered in this project, this lesson plan, this activity. What would I want students to know, and what knowledge, skills, and strategies would I expect students to gain? And the content standards came from the area of reading, students reading closely to determine what the text explicitly said, students determining central ideas or themes of a text, and also students delineating and evaluating the argument and specific claims in a text. The NETSS standards was standard number 3, research and information fluency. With respect to technology, students apply digital tools to gather, evaluate, and use information. After identifying the standards, you had to develop an essential question, um, a question to get students thinking, and also a question to help students focus. I developed how does researching background information about the author impact your understanding of the author's purpose for writing and the theme of the story. So in this lesson and activity, the students basically would be doing research on an author, in this case Lois Lowry, who is the author of The Giver. So in this lesson, the students are reading the novel The Giver, and for 2 to 3 days, they are using technology, the internet, Google as a search engine, as well as web pages to research the author Lois Lowry. After developing an essential question, the ISTE template called for you to identify how you would assess students, um, how would students illustrate their learning, um, how would students generate new knowledge, how would you identify progress, that's formative assessments, um, and what would students produce at the end. In here I've put see activity guide and activity worksheet because there was an activity guide which is showing here, and this is what students would read, and I would also present the steps on the smartboard, and the students would use this to come back to, and I as a teacher, as I facilitated learning through the room on a one-on-one basis, individually, I would refer back to the steps on the smartboard, back to the steps on the smartboard. And the activity sheet to go with this can be found here. The students would have 4 questions that they would answer, 2 to 3 sentences per question, and they would answer these questions based on the information they were receiving from the use of the internet and other digital tools. So after developing the assessment, and again, that was the activity guide and the activity worksheet that I just shared, um, you were to identify the resources that would be needed. In this case, desktop computers, maybe a wireless cart in the classroom, a smart board. Um, those would be the resources needed for this project. And then after that, how would you manage the classroom? I love this picture because it shows how I manage my classroom. I have a smart board there, a timer to help the students manage their time. We're using the wireless cart. They're working in flexible groups. Um, that's the instructional strategies basically being used in my classroom, the learning activities, thinking how can the teacher rotate the room and other students can have the opportunity to lead. How can we differentiate was another important section of the ISTE template for a lesson plan. How are you accommodating various learning styles by using the research-based instructional strategies? Definitely flexible grouping is a common one used in the classroom, and it works really well with this lesson activity. So in the end, in reflection, um, I think this was a really good lesson, and it's one that I will use again. Uh, the next novel that we'll be reading will be Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. So the students will complete the same worksheet on another author, so we will be able to compare and contrast, which is another um, research-based instructional activity. And in closure, if another teacher were to do this lesson, I would say something that really helps out is if you can provide 3 to 5 websites on the author and maybe post them at your blog. So this is a way to differentiate for students who may struggle. They will still have to go through the same process other students do. For example, using Google, finding your blog, and then at your blog, just finding about 3 websites already there, waiting for them on the author. And other students who, need a more rigorous activity, they can use other web pages, websites, other than the ones posted to your blog. So again, they are still having to go through a search engine and look for other web pages on the author. Um, the students were highly engaged because they enjoy the use of technology. I think that's something to explore and consider. And you can also teach them about the RAD test. This is a method of making sure that the websites and blogs being used provide relevant, accurate, and detailed information, and that's the information to use. So thank you for listening and enjoy this lesson on accounting for the author. Thank you.